Hello and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Doominal Crossing. Doom, my friend, how are you?
Doing very good, Andy. We're halfway through the school semester, and just registered for my final classes right before graduation. So
Hell yeah!
It's coming up here. It's coming up here very soon.
You applied for that student loan relief?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I did that a couple weeks ago. I actually I got an early invite to the application before the official one went live.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I did the official one too, just to be absolutely sure, because I don't want to miss anything. So they get to go through two applications when they do my thing. But yeah, very excited, and I'm even looking at houses now after I graduate too with some of my friends. So yeah,
that's
big
pretty exciting.
I know, it's so wild. What's weird is, like, I always thought, like, oh man, the housing market sucks right now, and don't get me wrong, the housing market does suck right now, but like it also, like, in the positions that me and my friends are in, it's a significantly more manageable than I thought, and we actually might be able to find something decent like 30-45 minutes out. So I mean, obviously we're just scratching the surface right now, but yeah, it's exciting times.
Oh, that is okay. I'll tell you what, if you buy a house.
Oh no, I'm not buying. We're renting.
Okay,
we're renting,
if you get a house, sorry, is what I meant. If you get a house, I am going to fix the hot tub in my house, and then we're gonna have the Omega Metroid team come over, have a hot tub party in snowy Calgary, Alberta.
Omega Metroid hot tub stream. It's happening, folks.
Dude, I think that would just boost our ratings just right up. We would just instantly level up at least a couple levels. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I don't know how we got on this topic. We're a Metroid podcast. We're going to talk some Metroid today. But actually, before we talk some Metroid, we are going to spend a little bit of time addressing the video game world and the controversies that have shaped it. So we are going to talk about some Halloween-esque scary places in the Metroid series today, some scary enemies and stuff like that. But I've kind of been talking about this, and I've been following this story pretty closely, and we were talking about this in the Omega Metroid Discord. I was talking about it on the ZeldaCast last week, and by the time you listen to this, yesterday's episode, and even from the time that I released the episode yesterday, which is, today, as we're recording on Monday, new information has come out, making the old information obsolete. Of course, I'm talking about the Bayonetta 3 voice acting kerfuffle. Is maybe the best word to use that doesn't have any curse words in it. Man, what a ginormous mess. Like, I think that this is an unfortunate scenario where every single person came out looking bad, except for maybe Jennifer Hale. Jennifer Hale looks great, but like every person involved with this looks awful. Platinum Games looks awful. Helena Taylor looks very awful, unfortunately.
I wouldn't say Platinum looks awful, but more Camilla looks awful just because of the way he acts online.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm kind of using those two interchangeably, but yeah, to your point, yeah. I mean, like, where do we start with this? Should we kind of recap the scenario very quickly here of what happened?
Yeah, probably. So basically, it first started. I can't even. Was it like 2 weeks ago when like?
Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can set it up, and then I'll let you hit it out of the park and offer your analysis. So last week, Helena Taylor, the former voice actress of Bayonetta, made a video and said, this company, Platinum Games, completely lowballed me. They offered me $4,000 to voice the character of Bayonetta, which is an insult. And I'm asking fans to boycott the game. And as you would expect, everyone was just like, that's a complete joke. $4,000 to voice a prominent character in I guess Bayonetta is a fairly niche series, but like, I'd say that the Bayonetta character is bigger than the Bayonetta series, if that makes sense. So like, you're voicing a character, the personality of that game is a big part of it. There's lots of support from other voice actors like David Hayter, Sean Chiplock, lots of other people were just like, that's garbage. And, Platinum Games didn't say anything back. They just blocked a bunch of people. And I think, what's that guy's name again? The head of the Platinum Games?
Hideki Kamiya is his name.
Kamiya, yes.
Yeah.
So he actually, like, deactivated his Twitter at one point. And so a couple days, maybe it was even the next day after, Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, who is a very, very reputable reporter, probably like the most trusted name, I would say, in video game journalism.
I would agree with that for sure.
He comes up with a report that essentially says that wasn't the whole story. What happened was Platinum Games tried to re-sign Helena Taylor to do Bayonetta 3, and they offered her a I guess a union standard of $4,000 per session for up to 4 or 5 sessions. So it kind of it at the minimum end it was 15,000, on the high end is 20,000. And Helena Taylor declined that, and then they went into a different direction and they brought in Jennifer Hale, who, I mean, like, that was what was so confusing about it initially, is because, like, I could have seen them phasing Helena Taylor out for like a new up and comer, which essentially means like a cheap up and comer, like someone that doesn't have the commanding value that, you know, maybe a more seasoned voice actress does. But like Jennifer Hale is like she's like the Julia Roberts of voice acting here. Like she's the biggest name I think potentially in this world. So
I mean, she's literally done like hundreds, if not thousands, of different voices in anime and gaming, and even a few I want to say TV roles as too. I could be wrong about that as well, but yeah, she's like one of the most prominent voice actresses in the business right now. I actually had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of years ago, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool.
But
she's the voice of Samus, or
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
sort of, right? Like
in Prime.
Yeah,
well, she does have some cut dialogue.
Yeah, well, that's good enough. She is the voice of Samus as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, so they hired Jennifer Hale, who is not obviously going to come cheap. So there was something fishy about the story. Bloomberg confirmed that Helena Taylor was offered 4 to 5 sessions for about $20,000, and the story obviously radically changed to people were like, "This isn't what you said, Miss Taylor. Like something is clearly amiss here." And so really, it kind of comes down to, and Helena Taylor this morning on Twitter essentially clarified and essentially corroborated what Jason Schreier reported. And so, like, yeah, I was offered this, but it wasn't good enough. It wasn't what I was worth, whatever. So it's a really bad look because, like, she lied by omission, because what happened afterwards is Platinum Games said to Helena Taylor, "How about this? We'll offer you a cameo spot where you can do a few roles, and we'll pay you for one session, which is $4,000, which is what Helena Taylor originally said that she was offered." But she left out the part where she was offered the main gig before. It's just, I think that there's a really, really good conversation going around the last couple days about like what is fair compensation for voice actors, because clearly they're not compensated well enough. I think almost everybody would agree with that. But not a good look for Helena Taylor, who by lying by omission, actually, I wonder if she's actually set that back and like done more damage to that than good. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I have no I don't know. I could just tell you what like an average fan guy thinks, and maybe this isn't like super related to Metroid, but it is. I think we're gonna see voice acting become a real staple of not only video gaming in general, which it already is, but I think like Metroid moving forward as well. So this does have some kind of ramifications on the series. So just a real dirty mess here. Just a bad look for everybody.
I actually don't think that this specific scenario is going to like set voice actors back by any means. Again, not that they're in a great position by any means. And we also kind of talked about this when we were talking about the Mario movie, and kind of our opinions on celebrity voiceovers versus professional voice acting and stuff like that. But I honestly don't think this is going to have a huge influence on the fight. If anything, I think this is just kind of, your kind of monthly reminder that, hey, don't immediately jump to conclusions before getting the whole story. And, this is something that we're all guilty of. I'm not like putting the blame on anyone else. I'm certainly a part of this as well. But, when, a story is coming out, we always want to jump to conclusions. We always want to like get there the quickest and the fastest. But, as the story has progressed and has rolled through, it's actually significantly more nuanced than it once initially appeared. And so, yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. I'm not gonna lie, I am very disappointed in the way Taylor initially handled it. And But yeah, beyond that, I don't really want to comment on anything beyond that again because there could be even more that we don't know about yet. Um,
Totally, yeah. I will say
all I will say
this.
though, or so you go
No, no,
first.
no. Finish your thought.
I was just gonna say I genuinely do feel bad for the just the other people in platinum or people like Hale who just had nothing to do with this at all, who've now like been
Yeah.
swept up in all this controversy, and I genuinely feel bad for them.
I think Jennifer Hale specifically, like, she got a lot of unwarranted and unwanted attention from fans of Bayonetta who perhaps, were I don't know, galvanized by Taylor. And she did release a very classy note that said, like, my reputation speaks for itself. I'm under an NDA, so I can't really comment, but like, look at my history and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I think she's absolutely right. Like, she's one of the most respected and longest tenured voice actresses in this industry for a reason. So, but I feel bad for like the fans of Bayonetta 3. Like, this game has been what is it, like 8 years in the making, maybe even longer.
Well, it got announced in 2017, so we're about the
Yeah.
5 year mark
sorry.
right now.
So from the last bit, whatever. It's been a long time. So I was thinking of our buddy Quest actually, and I was just like, man, like that just sucks. Like being a really big fan of the series, and like you're hyped for this game coming out. It's the first Bayonetta game to come out since like Bayonetta 2, which was like 8 or 7 years ago or whatever it was. And you just got all this nonsense swirling around, and it's just like I feel bad for the people that just want to enjoy this game, and
Yeah,
it's too bad.
it almost kind of, and this is nowhere near in the same league as Bayonetta 3, but it kind of reminds me of like when Samus Returns was coming out, and there was the whole locked content behind Amiibo controversy. But obviously, that is nothing compared to what's going on here. Obviously, this is a much more serious issue that we're discussing about now than
Yeah,
Amiibos.
yeah. The last thing I want to say before we talk some Metroid here is I was very pro when this story first broke out. I was very pro Helena Taylor, and
I think we all were, yeah.
I think we all were, and I think that as a couple things that my takeaway here is one, as new information comes out, it's okay to change your opinion, and two, if a similar story broke again, I would always side with the person and not the corporation. I always want to give the person the benefit of the doubt. I believe the person almost every time over a corporation, right? So like the corporation will be fine. The corporation is going to do what it's going to do. It's going to keep making money. And the people will, I don't know what Helena Taylor has done to her career in voice acting. I don't know. I don't know if there's a whole lot of other people that are going to be looking at this whole scenario and saying, like, I want to cast her in my video game, which, again, is really unfortunate because I do think that people should get paid fairly in this industry. It's just perhaps, I don't know, perhaps could have been done differently, but hey, I thought since I had talked about it on the Zelda cast, and since we've talked about it in our Discord, and since I know that we have a bunch of Metroid fans that are fans of Bayonetta, and just because it's a very topical thing in the video game world, I did want to touch on it, so I'm glad that we did that.
Yeah, for sure. It's all just really unfortunate. Really unfortunate what's happening. I'm hoping that when the game does come out later this week, we can just hopefully all be able to like put this past us and just enjoy the game for what it is what I'm hoping, while still be able to like have this conversation.
Totally. Yeah. I got some good news. I'm playing a really fun Metroidvania that is going to be next week. The return of Inspired by Metroid is coming back, so we're going to be talking about that game. I don't want to say what game it is yet. If you follow me on Twitch or Twitter, you probably already know what it is, but I've had a real fun time with that, so good vibes as we transition over to talking about the Metroid series. And Doom, it's almost Halloween. Do you have any Halloween plans? Are you going to dress up as any Metroid characters?
I actually don't. It's actually funny. I cosplayed a ton this year, but I'm probably not going to dress up as Halloween, weirdly enough. I am going to play my first Resident Evil game, though. I've never played the Resident Evil series, and I'm going to be streaming that. Yeah, I'm going to be streaming that this Wednesday. So by the time you're all listening to it, that's going to be tomorrow, actually.
Which one are you starting with? Are you starting with one?
Yeah, I'm doing the remake of Resident Evil 1. I'm streaming that first.
Yeah.
I've owned the game for a couple of years now, but I never got around to it. And Yeah, I'm Resident Evil's relevant right now. Halloween's coming up. It feels like the perfect time to finally see what the series is all about.
I think you're gonna enjoy because Resident Evil 2, actually Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2, to a lesser extent Resident Evil 3, are incredible 3D Metroidvanias, believe it or
Okay.
not. So I think you're gonna be very happy with those games actually. Particularly 2. I really love Resident Evil 2. The remake they did a couple years ago was awesome. So
Yeah, I heard the remake was super good. Yeah.
it is super good, very scary, and maybe not. Maybe that's a little bit more scary than some areas of Metroid, but there are some pretty creepy areas in this series. So what we did today is we put together a list of some of the areas that really stuck out to us in the Metroid series, and I have some characters as well, some very creepy characters, but some of the areas that really stand out as being kind of a little bit spooky, a little bit scary, a little bit make you stand on your tiptoes, and the hair on your arms raise up. So I'll let you take it off because I think that we both had a pretty good, like, the same idea of the one that instantly came to our mind. So I'll let you take it away and describe it in that sweet detail that you do.
All right, so we're doing the big one right out
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
gate.
let's do it. Yeah.
All right, well, let's fly our way through the galaxy and land on the docking bay of the GFS Valhalla, shall we? I've always talked about how the Prime 3 Energy Cell quest, I think, is the best out of the series. Not just because of the way it's handled with, kind of the way where it's optional rather than with 1 and 2 where it's mandatory, but also the area is so much more interactive and memorable than, like, don't get me wrong, the Artifact Temple is awesome, but it's a single room. And then the Sky Temple, it's kind of whatever. It doesn't really leave that much of an impression. But the GFS Valhalla is incredible. And despite the fact that it reuses a lot of assets from the Olympus, just by simply changing the color tone, destroying or the color palette, destroying the area, and then the creepy music, especially that second track that plays when you get into the depths of the ship, where it really emphasizes those lower bass frequencies. Oh man, it's so good. And then the lore dumps you get when you start scanning all of the deceased enemies and the troopers, and then it's such a good sequence.
It's there's a lot of things about it that stick out to me as being very creepy. But actually, so I think one of the things that I remember the most is that I might be dating myself here, but do you remember before Metroid Prime 3 came out, there was that like Wii channel or whatever, and like
Yeah,
you could
the Metroid Prime 3 preview.
Yeah.
I still have that on my Wii, despite the fact that you can't access it anymore.
Me too. I remember that there was a lot of cool videos in there, but there was one of them that was it was called something like the Fate of the GFS Valhalla, and it was like it's kind of like found footage almost. Like it was like you were watching the Blair Witch Project, and like there is like kind of first person. You got the camera. It's like, am I playing Outlast here? And then like it just goes static and goes dark, and I was like, oh damn, like that's kind of something that we don't see a lot in this series. So I think that before the game even came out, that set the tone for this area in a very like creepy, mysterious kind of way, because I do think it's cool that like you go to there and I think that the mystery when you find like a derelict spaceship or like a wrecked something, your initial thought is like, what happened here? Like what's going on? So I remember just thinking that it's the second I walked in there, but then like I really loved the like the red hue that kind of permeates throughout the whole thing. It kind of like gives off this creepy like blood vibe, like some bad, Lord of the Rings on there, and they're just like, the blood moon rises, or the blood has been spilled tonight. It's like it looks red in here, like something bad has definitely happened. And then as you slowly kind of creep and crawl and progress your way through, and you unlock little bits and secrets and this is a spoiler. Actually, I'm going to save this part because I want to talk about this particular enemy later. But just as you get into like the ship itself and realize like this is so creepy, like people died here. Like it's pretty intense for Metroid.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, like the color palette and those blood red and orange hue changes. There's actually a lore reason why that's there too, which is so cool. If you pay attention to when Admiral Dane is giving his big briefing in the tutorial sequence to all the hunters, he mentions that the Valhalla goes missing and they lost contact in the Klar Nebula. And when you actually land on it, you can actually see a little bit of that nebula right outside of the ship, and that's what's portraying that red hue onto the environment, which is such a cool detail that didn't need to be in the game at all, but I love that it is.
Yeah, so very, very creepy area. I think really sets the tone, and I think you're right, actually. I think that this is the best version of the, what would you call it, like the artifact hunts or whatever in Metroid Prime, in the Metroid Prime trilogy.
It's I'd also say it's the best version of kind of like, as you were mentioning, the wrecked ship trope, which is, you know, it's not just overused. It's not just used a lot in Metroid. It's used a lot in sci-fi in general. But I think it's a testament to how well done it's here, that it's able to stand out from all those other examples.
Yeah, I think that I think that it does a really good job. And you mentioned the music too. The music is very creepy, which really adds to it. But it's like subtle creepy, I feel like, for me. But yeah, I do like it. It kind of has like that classic horror trope where like you'd be walking around like, all of a sudden some body with zero gravity floats out of a locker. So like it's kind of got like a, you know, you mentioned Resident Evil. It kind of is like, has a little bit of that kind of going on with it. And especially as you kind of get down to the lower part, there's a monster that you can fight, which you fought maybe once or twice already in the course of this game by then. But I always kind of get the jitters when I see this guy in the I think it's in the cargo bay. But yeah, so the GFS Valhalla definitely comes to mind front and center when you're thinking about creepy places in the Metroid series. Very like it feels like it feels like very Metroid, but also not very Metroid at the same time. And I wish that they would do kind of more like that, because like, you know, we were talking before the show went on, and I think that Metroid has a lot of really tense moments, but it doesn't necessarily have a lot of scary moments. You know, and I think that this one is like scary in that, not like a jump scary kind of way, but like kind of like it builds dread kind of way, like what's about to happen, like something is not good here.
It's uncomfortable. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not like there's no jump scares or anything. There's no like there's no like actual there's scary elements, but you're not scared. You're just uncomfortable. You're tense the whole way through. At least on your first playthrough. After you've memorized it all, like, you know, but that's like natural with any game, I almost feel like. But yeah, I would absolutely love to see kind of this style of Metroid attempted again. Not even necessarily for a full game, maybe similar to the Valhalla, where it's maybe like a section similar to that.
Right. Okay. I want to talk about an area that I have always felt was creepy.
I feel like there's one more thing we got to talk about Valhalla first.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I feel like, so the whole area in general is really scary, but then there's one big moment that I feel like most people will find on their playthrough, but probably not everyone, because it's technically optional and it's not required to finish the game. But the secret Aurora Unit 313 message, for me, that is what brings this whole area full circle for me. Everything, like, oh, that probably might be my favorite VO recording in that whole game, is 313's their last thoughts, so to speak, as they're getting sucked out of the Valhalla. It's such an uncomfortable message to read.
It is
listen to.
It is a cool thing too, because like it's like you have kind of like a plot purpose, or like it's like it largely. A lot of it is like optional, like you don't have to progress all the way, but like there is like a very like plot focused reason for this attack on the Valhalla, and like you kind of come full circle to that as you fight 313 at the end of the game, which is like actually such an awesome fight. Speaking of that, I loved that Metroid Prime 3 preview channel, the video that showed the Aurora units, and like it was doing the 2D thing and it stopped and it looked exactly like Mother Brain. That was so awesome. I loved that.
If anything, I was mad when that didn't show up in the game at all. And they didn't make that connection in the game. I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah,
like,
I thought they were gonna do like a 3D Torian. Actually, I was like, "This is cool." Maybe Metroid Prime 4. We can still get there.
I feel like we can talk more about those inconsistencies between the Prime 3 preview and Prime 3 when we do our definitive ranking, because I definitely have a lot of thoughts on that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's. I want to talk about another area that I think it's kind of creepy, but I'm not sure that anyone else does. I'm not sure that you'll agree with me here. But there's something about this area, and I think it's largely the music. But I don't know, something about the genetics laboratory in AM2R makes me very uncomfortable as a player. And you go in and there's kind of this creepy music that rises and falls, and it doesn't really sound like anything else in the soundtrack. It's kind of like it's like this weird kind of sounds like very alien, like and which is saying something because you're on this alien planet, which is like full of aliens. So I mean, go figure. But it sounds even more alien than what else is on that planet. And I don't know, just like even the name I think is like a little bit creepy too, because it's like genetics, like what are they making here, like what are they, it seems like it almost gives me the vibes of like they're trying to create like the ultimate monster. It reminds me of Alien, or to be more specific, Alien Covenant, when you find David and he's kind of engineering the xenomorphs and has perfected the formula. So it kind of gives me a little bit of that as well. And of course, like you could really say this for the entire game of AM2R, but this area in particular, I feel like is very tight, is very dark. There's like the kind of hints of green that flash and kind of give this kind of creepy little glow. So I always have thought of the genetics lab as kind of like this place that, you know, it gives you the sense that like something is about to go very wrong, and it does, because you're about to fight the Queen Metroid, which is another very intense and scary kind of showdown. But I think that the build up to that is very kind of unsettling.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. I don't think I had quite the same impact there, but I think that's just because at that point I already played Metroid 2. I'd beaten Metroid 2, so I had already, you know, had a sense of like where this was going. I'm like, okay, this is obviously like the final area before the boss. Right. And so like I could definitely see those vibes, but I just didn't really have the same impact just because I
and that's fair. I played AM2R by the way after Metroid 2 and Samus Returns, but I don't know, it was something about it that was just like there's something to be said about an area right before the final boss that it seems creepy, right? Like, or it seems like this is intense. And Impact Crater for Metroid Prime almost kind of gets there, but it's something about it just doesn't get the same kind of scary vibe to me. Maybe it's just that it's a very bright, very red area, but I don't know, just the darkness, the kind of creepy green stuff that's everywhere. The music really sells it for me, I think, is basically what I'm saying here. But that one's always stuck out to me. I don't think anyone else out there will necessarily agree with this pick, but I wanted to bring it up.
I will say though, I think you could make an argument that like almost the entirety of Metroid 2 can fit in that whole domain.
Yeah.
Because you know, there's the main tunnel area where you get the goated music, and it's just it's your safe area. You feel safe, but then every time you have to leave, you're just like, oh god, here we go, okay, let's do this. And it's so definitely I would almost put the entirety of Metroid 2 kind of in that almost creepy factor, which we talked about in our definitive ranking as well.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, like the Game Boy Metroid 2, I think.
Yes.
Could
yes,
really.
I'm specifically talking about OG Metroid 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of a case where your limitations actually help you. And actually, since we're kind of talking about this, I did have another area that, again, I don't know that anyone else will agree with me on, and I can't say that I think it's scary, but there is a sense of heightened awareness that I have when I get to this area. And that is Ridley's Lair in the original Metroid. Specifically Ridley's Lair. And I just want to preface this with, like, I've been playing a lot of Zero Mission lately. Like, a lot. And it's an incredible game. I love Zero Mission, actually. It's one of my favorite 2D Metroid games. But I will say that one thing that game does lose is a lot, in my opinion, is a lot of the kind of creepy ambiance that the original Nestroid created, specifically in terms of the music and specifically in terms of, like, it's a very bright game and you can very clearly see, and you're very powerful in that game as well. Like, you have lots of missiles, lots of everything. But I think that in the original Metroid game, it's a very, very hostile world. And even if, like I do when I play that game, you acquire the various suit, the screw attack, lots of missiles, and everything like that before you ever fight Kraid or Ridley, I think that you can go down to Ridley's Lair in Nestroid, and it's still like very intense because in that game there are the most powerful enemies in the game, save for Metroids in Torian. But the most powerful enemies in the game live there, so it's like you have to be on your toes. But the thing that really makes it stand out is like, typically in Nestroid, you're in this hallway, like either a vertical hallway or a horizontal one, and it's very big. There's lots of room to jump or avoid or whatever. You go to Ridley's Lair, and it's very narrow. Like, there's actually like barely any room to do anything. So you really have to be on your toes. And there's tons of those little bugs that pop out of the Super Mario tubes that are always trying to hit you. So I couldn't say it's scary, although I think the music is kind of creepy, and I think that like the all black background definitely adds to it. But it's very tense and a very just like head on a swivel kind of mentality when you get down to that area.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very claustrophobic area in an already claustrophobic game, I feel like.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any, or do you want me to keep going on my list here?
Let's see. Yeah, I'll talk about one. Again, this one isn't so much an area, it's more so a sequence, but let's go back to the previous game before Prime 3, Metroid Prime 2 Echo, specifically the introduction of that game where we are learning the fate of poor Galactic Federation Squad Bravo.
Rip.
Yeah, so basically we get our mission sequence of the game, and basically the entire point of the mission is, hey, locate the survivors, get them off the planet, and as we soon discover, we're not going to be able to complete that objective, and in fact we might even have to do some collateral damage as some of those corpses are overtaken by the Ing and turned into zombies, which you say zombies in Metroid and you're like, what, that's weird, that doesn't make sense, and somehow Echoes finds a way.
That's not even the first time zombies have been in Metroid, by the way. There's tons of zombie dudes that the X have taken over.
That is true. That is true, yeah.
I love zombies. We should have more zombies in Metroid, actually.
Yeah, I'd be down for it, for sure.
Is that the first time that you see the X proper in that game? I can't remember, because I know it's early, but it's not like right at the beginning. I don't...
You mean the Ing?
Or, yes, I'm sorry, the Ing proper in that game. I think you do see the Ing before that, right? I think.
No, they're introduced. They're introduced in Echoes.
Well, no, I mean like before that specific cutscene. Anyways, the point I'm trying to drive at here is I think it would have been very, very cool. I like that scene a lot, but I think it could have been even better, actually. And I keep on saying it's too bright or whatever, but like the fact is it's like set in the daytime, so it's kind of not as scary as it maybe could be. If they would have set that at night and had like these guys getting bitten apart and like from these things in the shadows, and like they did the big reveal of like what the Ing were in like a ladder cutscene, I think that could have been really cool. Although I guess by that point you kind of got to start fighting Ing like right away. But either way, it's a very effective scene. You definitely feel for those poor bastards on the ship as they get torn apart.
Well, I think it helps that before that you're in the Splinter hives before then. I feel like that kind of occupies like the dark claustrophobic aspect of the area, and where you're kind of doing that. And then once you get back to the surface, you feel slightly safe, but it's also a bit unnerving because you look up in the sky and you see the atmosphere turn purple like intermittently, and it actually will change the lighting in the environment. So it's like you feel safe, but with a huge asterisk on it. So I think I still think it's quite effective in that regard.
Yeah, I could say I would say that you could almost just say like in general, while again I don't know if you could say scary, although there are some moments where it looks scary. Like the Dark World, the Dark Aether in general, you could almost say is like a very, again, not scary, but hostile. Very hostile place to you.
Oppressive.
Yeah. And that, again, your head is always on a swivel. You literally have to dart from place to place for the majority of the game in order to even survive in this place. So I think that Dark Aether, actually there's two areas in particular that I think are pretty effective in kind of being a little bit creepy. And one of them is the Hive. And I can't explain why I think the Ing Hive is so... And there's something just about like the Ing corrupting this incredible monumental sanctuary of like mechanical perfection and turning it into like this dark mirror of that I always thought was a little bit unsettling. And like you know, you obviously get very powerful ing that get by there, but also just like I think the Sky Temple in and of itself is kind of weird, or like just a little bit unsettling. And I think it's actually for me just because of the name, which like to me, a big Zelda guy, I hear Sky Temple and I'm thinking like, yeah, we're up in the sky and it's sunny and there's clouds and there's blue skies, and you get there and it's just like, where the hell am I? There's no sky here. Like it's Dark Aether. So that one it sticks out to me as well.
For sure, yeah, I could definitely see that with the Zelda comparison. I never really thought of it that way.
I have one. You know, we've been talking about scary places in the Metroid series for you know, the better part of 20 minutes now, and we haven't mentioned Metroid Fusion, which I would imagine is what most people think of when they think of, you know, scary scenarios in the Metroid series. And I'm a little bit torn on this one actually, because I think like I don't know, like I don't actually find that game very like frightening to play, because like the situations that you encounter at the SAX, I would say that like they're not scary. It's not like you're creeping around and like you trip something and it notices you and then blasts you to oblivion. There are very specific scenarios where you have to perform specific actions in order to get away from it, and like when those happen, it's like this bombastic escape music starts playing, and like you have to, you know, be picture perfect with your controls. But I couldn't say it was scary, right? Like I think that the closest thing that I would get to in terms of like this is starting to freak me out is actually in Sector 6, as you kind of get down, and like you eventually find the little area where like the box robot is, and you go fight him, and you can see the restricted zone, but you can't quite access it yet. That to me was like pretty creepy. And then like when you actually get onto the restricted zone and you're just like, oh my god, this is like not right. That is like, I think, the creepiest part of that game. But even that is like, they don't let it breathe for very long, because like immediately the SAX is there and it's like completely ripping things apart and destroying things. So it's just like, it's less of like the horror setting in, and like more of like the horror, and then it's like, oh, I gotta get out of here like right now. So it's kind of weird, because like I think I would be in agreement with almost every Metroid fan in saying that like I think that Metroid Fusion consistently has like the most the atmosphere that feels like the most tense, or the most like, you know, dread filled, I guess, for lack of a better word. But again, I don't know if I could say that I think that any particular section of that is scary. Or am I? What do you think about that assessment?
I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah, Fusion is a very tense game, but like I wouldn't really call it scary. At least considering the age when I first played it. Maybe if I was like really young when I first played Fusion, I might have different memories that I could look back on. But I didn't play Fusion. Fusion was actually, believe it or not, one of the last 2D Metroids that I got around to playing. I played that after Metroid 2. I was like in high school by the time I played Fusion. It took me a while to get to that one. But so yeah, by that time I didn't really have any like childhood memories that I could really draw on from that and like be able to compare and go on to that. I will say probably in terms of like the tensest or the most like kind of, I wouldn't really call it scared, but the equivalent is like the Metal Gear Solid exclamation point, the where I just kind of went, oh, that is yeah, I had the big moment where that happened for me is when there's an SAX sequence in Sector 5, and it just comes out of nowhere. You bomb a morph ball tunnel, and you're following the morph ball tunnel, and it leads to a door, and then right before you go through, it opens, and that thing just comes up, and then that heartbeat, that, and it's just like,
there's no music, by the way. It's just the footsteps. Yeah, that's creepy.
And then when I'm just like, don't move. Oh wait, it's laying a power bomb. I actually have to move right now, or I'm dead.
You know what's funny? So I've played. Oh my god, I can't even tell you how many times I played Metroid Fusion. I have never, even when I was a kid. This game came out when I was like 12 or 13. Even when I was a kid, I never encountered the SAX there, because as soon as he laid that power bomb, I rolled all the way to the left by the door and just hung out there. And the power bomb doesn't hit you; it stops right before it hits you. So I would wait for it to go down, and like I could hear the door open, and I was like, I think I'm safe to go now. And I would scoot over and go through. I've never actually encountered him there. I keep on saying him, it. But yeah, that's a pretty. There are like definitely like sequences in Metroid Dread where it's tense and it's just like, I hope this guy doesn't see me. But man, I don't want to say too much because we are gonna do a show in December about like specific things we want to see in a Metroid Fusion remake. That would like if you could implement a way where like the SAX could attack at random intervals. That would be a game changer, and make it so that the ship isn't as bright and inviting, and that like it's kind of you have to really look around.
I don't think the brightness will be in it because the reason why both Fusion and Zero Mission are bright is just because of the era those were released on. They were made for the Game Boy Advance, which the original model had no backlight, and so they had to compensate for that by upping that saturation up in those colors.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to I think the games look great actually for what they are. But it is definitely a limitation it's kind of the opposite, actually, of Nestroid and Metroid 2, where it's like, these ones you had to make them really bright versus those ones which had to be very dark. So I think both of those scenarios are great, but it's just, I do think that like a little lower lighting would have helped. And I actually think that I'm going to say the exact same thing about this next area as well. And that is the EMMI Zones, which on one hand are very tense and somewhat, I don't know if frightening and scary isn't quite the appropriate word, but they're certainly tense, and you certainly have to be mindful about where this thing is. And the EMMI does have an element of randomness that it can attack you with and appear. And I know you've probably had this where you've just walk in a corner, open a door, and like, bam, there's the EMMI, and it's just like, oh god. But it's not like scary necessarily. It is pretty creepy when he starts chasing you, and you're just like, oh god. But again, that's kind of more so tense than scary. But I think that we were kind of talking about this last week with Griff in our Metroid Dread 1 year retrospective. But I do wish that the EMMI Zones had a little bit more visual diversity to them, because they're all kind of the same. Mm-hmm. They're all very bright. They're all very they're really bright actually for some reason. When I think that like the first time that you go into Dairon, for example, and everything's dark. That would have been a cool EMMI Zone to have to kind of deal with, and maybe all you could see is like
that would have been
the red glow of its eye, like that. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. It's actually funny. So when I was doing my my Dread Mode stream, Spire fan, good friend of us in the Omega Metroid Discord, he actually clipped a really funny moment with the speed booster EMMI, where I thought I was safe. I thought it was like on the totally other side of the arena. But it was directly in front of me on the opposite side, and it got a minor jump scare out of me just because I did not expect that at all. Oh. And so yeah, if you want to check that out, you can shameless plug twitch.tv.com/numinal crossing if you want to check that clip out. And yeah, but overall, yeah, I totally agree with your criticisms there. It's not even so much the brightness, but like you said, all of the EMMI areas look very same. They're all like these factory settings, despite the fact that not all of the areas are factory-style environments. Like, I think it makes sense for, like, Dairon or Cataris, but, like, some of the other areas, like, I don't feel like that
particularly Gavarin, I think.
Yeah, especially Gavarin. I don't think that aesthetic really matched the rest of the area tone. And like you said, like, a dark EMMI zone, especially because, like, Metroid Dread does this really cool thing where, especially in Dairon with the blackout areas, an area will be completely dark. And it highlights Samus's lights quite a bit on the screen, which looks really cool when the camera is zoomed out like that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like having a dark EMMI area would emphasize that even more, because that doesn't really happen that often throughout the game.
No, that's the only time, I think. The initial time that you go to Dairon, which is too bad. Oh, I really want to talk about my idea for a Metroid Fusion remake, because I think this actually has a decent chance of coming true, but I'm going to save that for our episode. We have... by the way, Doom's plugging, so I'm going to plug too. We have basically the entire rest of the year after the next couple shows are dedicated to the 20-year anniversaries of both Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion. So November is Metroid Prime month and December is Metroid Fusion month, and I actually can't wait. I'm like so stoked to talk about Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion in depth in the next couple weeks here on the show. But I'm going to save that for that show, and I have an idea that I'm going to pitch you then when we get around to that. Another area that I think is pretty creepy. It was probably more creepy the first time I played it when I was a little younger. But the first time you walk into the wrecked ship, I mean, that's pretty you know, it's very antithetical to that game so far, and then like nothing's working. There is no enemies really to attack you. You have the ghosts that kind of show up, but they don't really do a whole lot. Save stations don't work. Map stations don't work. It's just like, this is like very not right. And again, kind of you go and fight the boss immediately versus kind of towards the end of the area. So a lot about that area definitely sticks out as being kind of like one of the OG Metroid areas that was really trying to give you the chills or tell you that like something is off in this particular area. And again, kind of like we were talking about with the Valhalla, it's just kind of like, I wonder what happened here. Like, you know, what's going on? How did this get like this?
I mean, it's quite literally the first time that Metroid engaged in the wrecked ship trope in an area literally called the wrecked ship. Can't get more on the nose than that. But yeah. Again, I think it's a testament to just how well this area holds up that, you know, we still talk about it all these years later. And yeah, you know, when you mentioned the save station and map stations not working, that's the big thing that stood out to me when I played Super for the first time, because I believe I played Super. So at this point in my life, I had beaten Metroid Prime, Zero Mission, and Prime 2, and Hunters as well. But that was the extent of my knowledge. And then Super came out on the Wii Virtual Console, I want to say a week or two before Prime 3 came out. So I ended up buying that and beat Super Metroid literally right before I picked up my Prime 3 pre-order back in the day. And so I never really experienced, like, obviously there was the ship in Zero Mission, but that was a very different kind of tone. Very good tone, but definitely not a creepy tone like the wrecked ship was in Super Metroid. And so that was like my first taste of that kind of it. And yeah, I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, it's a very unique area in the Metroid series. Even with the wreck ship trope, I think like there's not a lot of places that do like boss first. No, nothing's working. Encourages you to like not really explore and just go like directly, you know, to what you need. It's kind of it's a cool area. I have one more area that I want to talk about that I think is kind of creepy. And I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not, but I always thought that it kind of was. And it's actually not necessarily an area so much, but in Samus Returns, which I don't think a whole lot of us would say like the visual diversity in that game was its strongest suit. But in Samus Returns, after you defeat the Queen Metroid and you are slowly making your way back up to SR388, the surface of SR388, the sky behind you starts to turn, and it's turning like this very ominous looking green color, and like there's a storm in the background, and it looks like you've got this like creepy green shining everywhere, and it's just like, what is happening here? Is there like some kind of like storm or geoelectrical current brewing or something like that? And of course you end up fighting Proteus Ridley, and it's one of the best fights in the series. But that whole aesthetic with like the creepy green sky and it was very unsettling and a very good like visual cue of foreshadowing, like, buckle up, buddy, because this game's not done yet.
Yeah, for sure. It was a pretty good way to inform the player, regardless if they're a new player or a returning player that's experienced before. Like, hold up. This isn't going to end the way you think it's about to end.
Mm-hmm,
we're going to pull a classic Nintendo. We have one more announcement.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. So yeah, that was all. I do have some enemies that I want to talk about, but in terms of actual areas in the Metroid series, those are the ones that come to mind in terms of being like a little creepy, a little scary to go through. And you know, I guess there are different definitions. I'm thinking, when I started, I'm thinking like scary as in like a Resident Evil type of like, oh, this is like not cool. But I guess scary can also mean like I am afraid to go in this area because it's so hostile, or there's so many enemies, or there's so much danger. And I think that everything that we listed definitely like at least fits somewhere in those categories on this list. Did you have any others that you wanted to talk about, or can I start spewing off some of my favorite creepy enemies in the series?
Not really. There's some small examples, but nothing really that, like, I think we covered like all the major ones. So yeah.
So I was talking about it earlier. I don't know why for some reason this enemy just like completely gives me the creeps, and that is the Metroid Hatcher, and that is something that you can find in the GFS Valhalla. I don't know what it is, because it's not like, it's this weird kind of organism, and it doesn't really look like any other kind of Metroid. It's like a, it's got like a body, and it has 4 tentacles that crawl around from it, and it spews out other little Metroids, which to this point is something that only a queen can do. So it's like, it's very clearly a phase-on corrupted organism that's transformed into like this. It does actually, what it does is it this one to me very much kind of carries over the original idea of Alien, which is like a lot of body horror and stuff like that, because it's got all the limbs, and the Samus, you have to use your grapple to like rip the limbs off and stuff like that. And it's just I don't know, this guy has always kind of creeped me out a little bit. I don't enjoy fighting them.
Well, so I don't know if you know about this. You can actually one-shot them after you get the X-ray visor and the Nova Beam combo together. It makes short work of them, like no joke. But yeah. So I always make sure, because there's one that you have to fight mandatory before you get that combo. But then there's 2 more that you fight through the game, and you can. And so I always make sure that I have those 2 items before I face them, just so that I can make short work of them.
You know what?
But
yeah. Sorry to interrupt. You know what area maybe we should have given some love to as well for being kind of a creepy area is the pirate homeworld. It's kind of like got some danger going on. There's acid rain.
You know, you want to talk about body horror. There's actually quite a bit of that in the pirate. There's like literal platforms of like deceased carcasses that you have to traverse on. There's like this one center complex room, and there's like this almost whale-like figure that's carved out and has a console inside of it. And it's like, man, what is wrong with you guys? This does not pass OSHA regulations at all.
I just love like all the contorted space pirate bodies. It's like, all right, well, this guy's not getting into the morph ball next. Let's see you try. Yeah, Pirate Homeworld. Yeah, we should have given that a shout out as well. But yeah, I don't know, these Hatcher Metroids, they just give me the creeps. I don't know.
The one that gave me more of the creeps and is kind of the entire secondary sequence on Norian. It's a completely optional one, but it's one that you have to do if you want to get 100% of the items. I don't know, there's something about that always creeped me out, just because it's like, you're going back to this place where you won. You definitively won the battle. Everything is done, but there's this little quarantine that you missed, or that no one got around to, that's still just building up this infestation that you have to go and clear out. I don't know, there's something about that just, I don't know, again, not scary by any means, but just made me feel very uncomfortable. Like, this place that's supposed to be safe is about to become very unsafe unless we do something about this.
You know, it really is too bad that of the 3 games, I feel like Corruption kind of gets dogged on the most. And I think it's like one of the best games in the series, actually. I love that game.
I've always said it's my least favorite of the trilogy, but I still think it's a phenomenal game that like everyone needs to play.
And it is different. It's maybe a little bit more quote unquote linear, but I think that you kind of want that. Like, you have 2 games that are already, actually each Metroid Prime game kind of has its own distinct identity in terms of like progression and stuff like that. So I think that for trading off a little bit of the exploration and adding more like narrative and stuff like that, it's Metroid Prime 3 Corruption really deserves more love than it gets. Anyways, another enemy that I feel like is only appropriate to talk about when we're talking about creepy enemies in this series. I remember the first time I saw this guy and I was like, what the hell is this? Nightmare! That guy is just a, I don't know, like, it's just a very what actually makes it even more unsettling is like the gravity effects that are kind of going around it, because like the room doesn't quite look real, and then of course when you bust off its faceplate, you see that gross like face underneath. It's like, what the hell were they trying to make here? And also actually noteworthy too is like, this is not possessed by an X, I don't believe. I could be wrong.
It is.
Is it? Okay, I could be wrong.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there technically is one in Other M that's not possessed by an X, but I mean, that's nowhere near as cool.
I actually think the one in Other M is also pretty decently creepy as well. I think they did a good job modeling that in 3D, I have to say.
I don't know, maybe it's just the music that doesn't live up, because I mean, obviously you got that legendary Minako Hamano boss theme that plays. Very repetitive, but I think it works for like the fight. But the biggest thing that always stood out to me again is like that, that oozing face after you break the faceplate off. And like, it looked, I mean, you almost feel like you're trying to put it out of its misery almost, because it just looks just tortured and disheveled and just like
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, you almost feel bad for it.
It's it is too bad because you kind of, yeah, the more you damage it, it almost looks like it's crying almost, because like its face is just drooping. But it's a very unsettling fight. Obviously, if we're going to talk about scary monsters in this franchise, we have to mention the SAX, probably the most frightening creature in the series. Would you agree with that?
For sure, yeah. I would say even like the most iconic one of the quote unquote frightening creatures, for sure. Just because I mean, again, that zoom in of the white eyes. I mean, that's like an iconic Metroid moment.
Yeah.
In the entire series.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, what else do you want to say about the SAX that hasn't been said before? But I do think that almost, maybe not quite as iconic, but definitely iconic, and I think you'll agree with this one. That shot of Dark Samus at the end of Metroid Prime 2 with like the skull. Dude.
I wouldn't say it's creepy, but I love that.
You actually wouldn't? Oh, I think it looked like super creepy, because it's like you're looking at like this skeleton.
What I think is really cool is that it looks like it almost looks like the core essence of Metroid Prime and its color scheme and kind of the way it's designed. And in my headcanon, that's kind of where I interpret that Samus makes the connection that Dark Samus is Metroid Prime. Just in my own personal headcanon, but it was actually really cool. Slightly off topic, but my friend who lives about 45 minutes away from me, he actually has a modded Switch, and he has a ton of like fan costumes for Super Smash Brothers, and one of them he has for Dark Samus is the final boss form. And so like immediately I use that every time I go to his house because it looks so cool.
Oh, buddy, take some screenshots next time you're there. I gotta check that out. That sounds super
so
cool. Awesome. Where do you land on the EMMI as a creepy enemy? Are you for that or against it? I wrote it down, but I don't know if I think it's as creepy, because you do have the ability to counter it. And I actually think the scariest EMMI that you see in the game is the first one that's all like damaged and messed up. It's a little bit harder to be scared of like the bright green or bright yellow EMMI, at least to me. Like, they don't look particularly menacing. They'll kill you in like one shot, but just visually, looks wise, and especially if you're playing Metroid Dread and kind of get into a cadence and just learn that you can essentially outrun them in every scenario that you're in. I don't know, but I think that they're definitely worth a mention at least.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to judge this because, again, like you and me, like we've beaten Metroid Dread more times than we can count. I've ran out of fingers at this point. Like that's how many times I've beaten Metroid Dread. And so at this point, yeah, I'm pretty used to how the EMMIs work. Obviously not perfect. Again, I talked about that Spire clip from earlier in the episode,
right.
But you know, like you treat them more and more as a game element and less as an entity, if that makes sense. But I would say on the first player, they're definitely threatening at the very least.
Okay, I got one more enemy. It kind of gives me the creeps, because it's like, again, it's kind of my own headcanon, but it's like, what happened like to this poor creature? And that is Genesis from AM2R, which is a completely optional hidden, I don't even know if the term boss is appropriate. I guess it probably is. But it's a hidden boss that's on the GFS Toth, and you have to, or I don't know how you say that, Toth.
Well, technically, it's based on a creature infusion, actually.
Yeah, so it is. And when I was doing some research, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I do remember these guys in Metroid Fusion. They're the little things that hang out above, kind of by Ridley, that hang out above where you are, and they drop acid on you, and you kind of have a little bit of a hard time killing them. But there's this one in AM2R that's on this ship by himself. It's the only living thing on this ship, running around, and he takes like a ton of damage to be able to defeat. And in my head, I'm just like, why were you here? Like, what is wrong with this picture? Like, what are you doing here? Also, like, how did you get here but onto the BS? I don't know. So there's something about it that's just like not right. And I think that, like, I'm the kind of guy that when I'm watching, like, playing a game, watching a movie, anything like that, the kind of, like, horror that sticks out to me and, like, actually makes me feel, like disturbed is kind of, like, when you're watching something and, you know, like, something's not quite right here and the other shoe is gonna drop. Like, I'm not really one for, like supernatural kind of horror movies or, like slasher or anything, or jump scare movies. Like, those ones are kind of like, whatever. But, like,
yeah, I much prefer thrillers. I totally agree.
Yeah, well, like, I like the slow burn, like, kind of psychological horror movies.
Yes.
Which, off the top of my head, I'm not, like, the biggest horror fan in the world, because I think that it's hard to do it correctly. But, like, The Shining is something that I really like, because that's kind of creepy, and it's like, something ain't right here. Something's going to go horribly wrong. And
I'd also put Get Out in that same territory
yes,
as well.
Yeah. You know what's, you know, one of the scenes in that movie, which is just, like, the most, like, if this was in any other movie, it wouldn't be creepy, but, like, at nighttime, when that dude is running at top speed towards the main character, I was just like, ugh. Like, that's a scary scene in that movie. But it's scary because it's not right. Be like, why is someone running top speed at you in the middle of the night, right? Like, and so I kind of feel that way about Genesis as well. Like, this dude clearly shouldn't be here. Something happened to this crew. I don't know what. Don't like him. So yeah,
not a fan. 1-star review.
Yeah, that's my list of scary places and scary beings in the Metroid series. Did we miss anything, Doom?
I don't want to say scary necessarily, but just I hate fighting them. The huntering in Metroid Prime 2. Their designs are really unnerving and they're annoying to fight.
They're horrible
until you get the dark visor and yeah.
No, they're just, like, annoying, actually, I think, more so than anything, because it's like they phase in and it's like, great, I'm gonna shoot that, and then, like, it disappears immediately. It takes, like, forever to resurface, and you're just like,
okay, we gotta go back to Prime 3. Speaking of phasing in and out, we didn't talk about Xeno research. That's, like, a big part of Prime 3. We didn't talk about that.
Go on. I need to refresh my memory with what you're talking about.
Xeno research, when you first encounter the Phazon Metroids on the pirate-controlled territory of Skytown. So you're traveling through Skytown. It's like, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you open a door, and there's a brittle husk of a pirate that disintegrates.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, what the hell are we doing?
With this ear-piercing, like a sound cue to go with it, just to tell you, like, oh yeah, this is about to go downhill real fast.
And then you discover
the Xeno. Yeah, and then you discover the Xeno Research Lab. You see the Metroids, and they're behind these force fields, and you just know, like, oh, they're not going to stay there for so long. I've been enough Metroids to know how this goes down. And then, sure enough, you find, I believe, the Seeker missiles in that area, and sure enough, the Seeker missiles are behind another force field, and there's an energy cell right behind it, and you just know immediately, like,
oh yeah,
well, here we go, I guess.
As soon as I pick that up, bad things are going to happen. Well, yeah, so there it is. We're getting ready for Halloween. We have another scary episode next week. Alien in Review returns for Alien 3, the controversial Alien 3. So getting your Halloween started right this week.
I know you've been looking forward to this one.
I have. I'm very excited. I'm very excited, actually, for this. So, yeah, that's going down next week. But, yeah, so there it is. Our picks for the scariest places in the Metroid series, the creepiest enemies in the Metroid series. Let us know if we missed anything, if you disagree, if you're laughing at us for being a bunch of wimps. We'd love to know over on Twitter. You can check us out at Omega Metroid Pod. You can check me out at Spiteri316 and Doom out over at Doom Cross. And subscribe while you're there. Check us out on Podbean, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, check out OmegaMetroid.com. All your Metroid needs, news, guides, maps, whatever you name it, it's there. We got you covered. We're going to get out of here for this week, but we'll be back next week for Alien in Review. So until then, everybody, take care.